All right, why don't we go ahead and start? So is there anyone this morning that has any comments? Reed, do you have any comments?
Good morning. No, I don't have anything to say. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. All right, why don't we start to then look at the minutes of January 19th.
Thanks, Sam.
So the only one thing I saw that it was on page 3, you just scrolled by it. Like 2/3 of the way down on page 3. It talks about the class being from January and May, and I think it goes January through May, where it says WCC being a project sponsor.
Oh, yeah, okay. Got it.
Oh, sorry, yeah. Yeah, so through, I think it goes right through the whole,
Mhm.
that whole period of time.
Yeah, Terry, I think that Walter specifically asked that a sponsor attend the first class in January and the graduation in May. I think that's just why it's worded that way.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense then. Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure that doesn't need to be a correction.
Yeah.
Okay, any comments on the minutes? Would anyone, first, I just need to ask if Reed, I see that Reed Carr is still connecting to audio.
Yeah, it's okay. I'm here.
Oh, you are there.
That's my
Okay,
that's my
great.
other device. Yeah, it's in setup mode.
Okay, great. All right, I just wanted to make sure you could hear me.
And I'll move approval of the minutes.
Oh, thank you very much, Reed. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Gary. Any further comment? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes signify by saying aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Is there anyone abstaining? So I read in the open meeting law that I'm supposed to do a roll call, but I think I know who's on. Is that okay, Melinda? And if I say if anyone's abstaining or saying nay, I think I can get everyone in.
It's only if the vote is not unanimous, and I don't think we've been doing that, but yeah, if there's somebody that either abstains or votes nay, then we have to go through and call on each person has to say, their name and that they're voting, aye or nay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. That's good to know.
Yep.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, and thank you again for the minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, we're a little early with this, but I just wanted to say that I asked Melinda, this was not supposed to be a discussion. I just asked Melinda to summarize what had happened in the planning commission meeting with Mr. Glazer. And I thought it was informative for us to know the details. Melinda said that she thought that we were going to have a couple people on for this. Is that right, Melinda?
I thought that at least Ken would be showing up to answer questions from you all if you had any. But you're right that we're about 5 minutes, 5 or 10 minutes early for this item. So he may show up. If you'd like, I can briefly summarize and then maybe he'll show up.
Okay, yeah, I think that's helpful because if you can summarize, that would be great.
Yeah. So the Glazers who own I think it's about like a 97 acre parcel on the corner of Old Stage and Mountain View. I think you all are familiar with that parcel. It's the windswept farm. And Jack Glazer is thinking about possibly developing that parcel with residences. And but he also, so he came to the planning commission. He and his representative Ken Bellevaux came to the last planning commission because they're considering applying for a specific plan. And the purpose of doing a specific plan would be to enable development of that parcel more expediently than could happen through growth management. So in other words, have it build out faster than would they be able to under the current growth management system, because the allocation in the residential zoning district is very competitive and we have a number of projects that are currently building out there. So it would be a very slow build out. And they are proposing a substantial, so in order for a specific plan to be adopted by the select board, basically a specific plan is considered an amendment to the town bylaws, and it's also considered an amendment to the comprehensive plan. And it basically allows, it's kind of like Williston's version of a planned unit development. It allows a different sort of a different kind of use and or development on a parcel, different from what's normally allowed in the zoning district. And I see Ken is here. But in order for the planning commission and select board to adopt a specific plan, they would have to make a finding that there is a substantial benefit would result to the town from the specific plan. And so Ken is here, and maybe he, when he gets connected and everything, maybe he could speak more directly to what is being proposed as the substantial benefit in this case. Hi, Ken.
Good morning. I thought this was supposed to be 7:15, Melinda.
Yeah, I know.
That was my fault.
That's
So-
all right. I just, I kind of started by giving a brief kind of rundown of what happened at the planning commission. We didn't get very far. I just stated that you and Mr. Glazer came to the planning commission to propose a specific plan. And I was filling them in on what the nature of a specific plan is in general, and about the requirement for a finding of substantial benefit. So that's kind of where I stopped. And yeah, so if you'd like, you can just speak more specifically about this proposed this specific plan under consideration by you and your client.
Thank you. Well, first of all, good morning and hello to both new and old faces. For those of you that are new faces, you may know that I used to actually work for the town. And I tried to retire about 3.5 years ago. I've gotten yanked back into work in a number of different places, this being one of them. But it's nice to be here. And so the Glazers own the property at the southwest corner of Mountain View Road and Old Stage Road. I mean, it's a property that I think for anybody that moves around in Williston, it's well known. It's 97 acres. It's prominent. I mean, I don't know, you can put it in any other way. You know, those two streets that frame it are major streets and everybody drives by it all the time. It's also identified as being a major view corridor in the town plan, among other places. And it's identified in the town plan as an open space resource that the town desires to try to protect. So those are, you know, couple of things about the property. You know, the Glazers have owned the property for about 20 years. They're at a point in time where sort of owning it and protecting it, they're at a point where they need to do something else. And so they're looking to consider all of their options, including the potential to develop it. The property is in the residential zoning district, which also means it's in the town's sewer service area. So that's a very important point. So unlike say some big field, comparable big field that might be in the rural part of town, which would have to have a mandatory 75% open space requirement and would have to be served by on-site water and sewer, this is a property in the residential district. Open space is not a requirement in this zoning district. And it's served by municipal water and sewer, which is why you have this potential density yield of 3 dwelling units per acre. It could actually go to 5 dwelling units per acre if there's an affordable housing component. So it's a big property, it's prominent, it has a big open space component to it that's been identified as desirable by the town, but the development regulations don't require open space and it has significant development potential. So just some background about some facts of the property and also kind of where the Glazers are at. Specific plan is, there's a whole chapter in the bylaw, chapter 9, devoted to specific plan. It's one of the tools that the town can potentially use to try to implement the town plan. So the Glazers, if they were to develop the property in a sort of a conventional way under the town's conventional zoning regulations, for them, that would create a rub because it would take a long time because of growth management. And I'm not going to belabor all the things that are involved in growth management. You can get Matt to give you a tutorial on that, or maybe Melinda, if she's brave enough. But so they're looking to see if there's an interest on the part of the town to potentially do something where there can be some open space that's protected and maybe enable the Glazers simultaneously to achieve their goals, which are to, basically to get an economic return on the property. Certainly, if the town were interested in buying the property, they would be willing to negotiate a sale. And that's one of the things that wasn't really mentioned at the Planning Commission, but certainly the Glazers would be open to that. They are interested in working with the town. They've lived in the town for 20 years. They want to try to do the right thing, but at the same time, the property represents a significant investment on their part. And, you know, as I said, they're looking to get some type of an economic return on it as well. So at this point, they've approached the Planning Commission on an informal basis. They have not submitted an application. And so the idea behind that is, with all specific plans that I'm aware of that have been processed in the town, certainly when I was working for the town, and I believe talking to Matt, that's still the case, is we've typically encouraged potential applicants to approach the Planning Commission informally prior to submitting an application, just to see whether or not there's an openness to it or not. And that's kind of where we are now. The Glazers are not interested in wasting anybody's time. The Planning Commission's got a lot on their plate. You folks have a lot on your plates. And so if there isn't any interest in it, then, you know, they would explore other options. If there isn't interested, they would be willing to, you know, roll up their sleeves and, you know, see if something can be worked out cooperatively with the town. So that's what I got, and I'd be happy to answer any questions any of you might have.
Ken, thank you. I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm Laura Meyer. I'm Chair of the Conservation Commission. I wanted to thank you very much for coming in today. I mean, I had asked Melinda just to fill us in on what was going on with it, just because I thought it was, especially for me, being still fairly new to the commission, I didn't know what a specific plan was, and I thought it was just informative to understand what was going on. So it was simply information, not a discussion, but I thank you very much for coming in case anyone has questions. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Hey, Carl.
Hi, Ken. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm good. I have one comment and one question. My comment is, I'd like to see it be on record that that we are grateful to the Glazers for not developing it over the past 20 years. There was a proposal 20 years ago to aggressively develop this property, and the Glazers stepped in and bought the property and kept it open all this time. So maybe all good things must end at some point, but I'm certainly grateful that it hasn't been developed over the past 20 years. That said, my question is, what specifically are they proposing to do with the property, and with what parts of the property, and what parts would they leave open?
Okay, well, so they don't have a specific development proposal already worked out. So, you know, we're in the early stages. What is known is, so when at the Planning Commission level, Melinda, I don't know if you have it handy, but we prepared a map of the property that we had submitted to the Planning Commission that, you know, even if we don't have it for this meeting, Melinda, maybe if you can't find it now, maybe you can just share it with the board later. But I would tell you, on the southwest portion of the site, so as you get towards, I guess where Northridge is and sort of down near the Martells, whatever, it's wet down there, and that's known. A wetlands delineation, which is a formal demarcation of wetlands, it's a technical term, has not yet been performed. There we go. So you see over there on the west side, Melinda, I don't know if you can wave your cursor over that area. There you go. So that's an area that we know is wet. How much of it is wet, not clear. I think a ballpark estimate is anywhere between 20 to 30 acres of that is probably a Class 2 wetland. So, you know, under the town's rules, you'd have to exclude that from any potential development, as well as, you know, any, you pretty much, you can't do anything there, and you would have to take that out before you calculate density as well. So obviously the Glazers are interested in, you know, in playing within the rules and working around that. The view shed, as I understand it from my review of the bylaw, the primary view shed corridor that's been identified is the northeast portion of the site, which is near the intersection of those two roads, Mountain View Road and Old Stage Road. So I would imagine that if this plan were to come together, that would be at least a portion of what would be preserved as open, and there could potentially be more. But you know, any development plan that would actually be worked out ideally would exclude both those wetlands. And realistically, in order to get the specific plan approved to find the substantial public benefit, I think one of the linchpins would be the preservation of that viewshed corridor, which has been identified in the town plan. So, you know, so not having a specific development proposal in hand, number one, but also those would be at least two components that I think as a working template, you'd think about those as subject to protection. Did I answer all your questions, Carl?
Yeah, so it looks then like the development, whatever it would be, and from the meeting last night, it looked like they're eligible just from the size of the property to develop a couple hundred units.
Right.
Which is, you know, which is pretty startling.
Yeah.
Looked like it would be along Old Stage Road further down.
I think that's realistic. And yeah.
I know Mr. Glazer also said that he's very aware that clustered housing is important. So I think if there was a development plan, it would be a very thoughtful one.
So there's a couple of us who've had our hands up on the.
Sorry, Terry, I can't see that. Go
Oh,
ahead,
so I think
Terry.
Reed had his hand up first, then I did, and then Gary.
Okay, Reed, go ahead.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hey,
Yes.
hey, Ken. I just wanted to echo that it's been really nice to see that that particular parcel undeveloped for the last 20 years. And this is something we've talked about a bit. It wasn't mentioned last night, but the idea that you guys are also open to the possibility of the town purchasing the property is something that the Conservation Commission obviously would process and consider. I think both those outcomes to me, I just wanted to say that both those outcomes to me are preferable to going down the normal growth management pathway and having a lot less control over what that area of the village looks like in the long term, of the residential zoning district, excuse me, in the long term.
Can I just ask a question? This is the second time I've heard somebody reference last night. Can you tell me what happened last
I
night?
apologize. I apologize. Last night's when I watched the video from the planning commission at the planning commission meeting where you presented.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Reed. Terry, did you want to say or ask a question?
Yeah, so I had a couple of questions. The first one is there any protection on this land currently, like current use? I know that has more to do with forestry, but is there any kind of an ag conservation on this piece of land? And also the second question is, how will this development affect Windswept Farm, which is the farm that is the horse farm, and they use this land to get their hay for their animals?
So Terry, I'm not aware of any sort of formal protections in the form of easements or anything like that are on the land today. The current use, as I understand, is really about how your taxes get abated or not. You know, it's voluntary program, you get approved by the state or not. and you're able to get your property taxed at a lower rate. And as I understand it, a property owner can undo being in current use pretty much at will. As far as the question about the windswept farm, Mr. Glazer informed me that essentially he's been allowing them to use it and hay it for the nominal sum of $1 per year. And that was certainly part of their, intentions with the property, was to see it continue to be used as it's historically been used, and that being one of them. So if this, property were to get developed, it would potentially affect them in some fashion. But so I think they have Mr. Glazer didn't specify the details, but it sounds to me like it's sort of a loose arrangement. They're neighbors, they get along, and they both have mutually enforcing goals for the property. And so that's been a marriage that's just went along singingly fine for the last 20 years.
Thank you, Ken. Is that all you had, Terry? Anything else?
No, that's right now, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Gary, do you have a question?
Well, yeah, more of a comment. I just want to kind of echo what Reed said earlier. Although I'm also, on the other hand, I recognize, like you pointed out earlier, Ken, that this is in the growth center. It does have town services. So, this also, at least some people will consider a good place for development so that we can service it well and such. But then again, I think the town may want to consider something with conservation, and maybe even more than that. I mean, I could see a community center or something else going in here too that would benefit the town if an arrangement could be made with Glazers. That's pretty much all I got.
I guess I had one other question. I don't think, Ken, you can answer this, but how much of the land would Mr. Glazer have to develop units to make it profitable or make it worth his while on this piece of land and conserve the other half part of it? So there must be a line to where how many units he would have to build out to make it a profitable for him.
Good question. And you're right, Terry. I don't know the answer to that. What I would say is that, so for the Glazers or any other property owner to become a development applicant, is once you start that ball rolling, just the costs of being able to navigate that process, they start to add up very, very quickly. So you've got, all what are sometimes called the soft costs, engineering fees, the fees that it costs that the town assesses to go before the town. Act 250, which is, huge. You're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars in fees just to go through Act 250. And then you haven't even started to talk about the cost of the infrastructure. Any roads that would be built would have to be paid for, all the water and sewer lines on the property, the connections to the town services, impact fees, which have to be paid for each dwelling unit that gets built. So, all those things start to add up. And the way ultimately a project pencils out is at some point you have to get a certain dwelling unit yield, as it were, in order to make it worth your while. So if you have 97 acres and you lost 25 or 30% of that, maybe there's 70 acres in play. I think Carl put it, you're talking about, in round numbers, a couple 100,000 dwelling units. Even on the small end of things, if somebody were interested in developing half of that, you're still talking about 100 dwelling units. it's a lot of dwelling units. And so I think realistically, to imagine a development potential in that way is probably realistic, you know, anywhere between 100 to 200 dwelling units. And, you know, in some ways that would help the town achieve certainly some housing goals. But it may push up against some of the other goals, like the preservation of the land as undeveloped land and as open space.
Laura, this is Reed.
Yes. Hi, Reed.
Yeah, Ken, I just wanted to ask, do you think that the Glazers would be open to something like the town purchasing some of the development rights in order to allow them to justify developing a smaller portion of those
Yeah.
units?
Yes, yes, Mr. Glazer has said that to me very specifically. And we didn't talk about that at the planning commission meeting, but it was one of the things that came up in our conversations, sort of our postmortem conversations afterwards, that that's certainly something that they would be open to. I can't emphasize enough, you can take this with a grain of salt, but you know, the Glazers they're very sincerely interested in working with the town and hopefully identifying something where both parties can achieve their goals and feel good about things at the end of the day. And if that involved either purchasing part of the property or the development rights or all of it, the Glazers certainly open to that.
Ken or Melinda, do either of you know the appraisal value of this land, number one, and number two, if the Glazers were to sell the land or its development rights, what they would be looking for to get out of it?
Well, that's a big question there, Carl. So my understanding is that I think the Glazers are in the process of trying to get the property appraised. So I'm not aware of an appraisal in hand, but I think they're looking to ascertain that for the very reason why you're asking that question. Whether the town is doing that as well, I don't know the answer to that. Melinda may know the answer to that. I do not know that. I think, you know, in my brain, you know, my math skills are limited to what I call planner's math, which are round numbers. And so if you had a piece of land that was 100 acres, and what would that translate into property value in round numbers? Would that be 30,000 an acre, 40,000 an acre, 50,000 an acre? Take your pick, one of those numbers, and multiply it by 100. And my guess would be, not knowing anything else, that the real number would be somewhere in there, in terms of what a value might be.
Yes, I just have just a comment. I just used an example, the Herskowitz property. By the time that the neighbors found out that that piece of land was going to be developed over near Mud Pond, he had already been to the Triddles and had written up a plan, and all beknownst to us until a Friday afternoon when the mail came, all the neighbors opened the letter and said there was going to be a development. And we sat down and had a talk with him. And you know, by that time, I don't know how many thousands of dollars he had put into this plan. So just a thought about getting ahead of that. I'm sure the town paid for that. I'm sure they covered his costs in the end when they purchased that land. So this is a great opportunity to get ahead of that and possibly lower, you know, decrease the cost of purchasing development rights or whatnot.
The one thing I would add to that, Terry, I think those are all correct statements, is that, you know, David was fairly far along. I mean, he actually been in front of the DRB at least once, if not more than once. So,
Right, and we just as neighbors, you know, you aren't really paying attention to that, and you know, we didn't know about it till the letter came in the mail, and we were all quite surprised. And he said, "Oh, I didn't think you would care." That was his statement. So, but I'm glad Mr. Glazier understands how important this piece of land is to the town.
Ken, thank you again for, I didn't expect you to come this morning, but it was really great that you did. So people could ask you directly about this. And it really was just for information. So thank you very much.
sure. Well, my pleasure. And like I said, nice to see some old familiar faces and some new ones as well. And perhaps I'll see you again at some point in the near future.
Thank you very much.
All right, you're welcome. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Ken.
All right, you're welcome.
Thanks, Ken.
What do I want to do?
Okay, next on the agenda, I think we were planning on looking at open meeting law, and it's not too far past 7:30. So Melinda, would you like to do the potential projects first, just because they're more important?
Yeah, why don't we do that? Because Gary, oh, there he is. Gary has to leave at I can't remember. He has to leave at 8:30. So
8:30, yeah.
So it'd be great if we could sort of take a look at those, because I developed a list of potential little individual projects for this field naturalist class to take on in the next couple of months. And they actually probably need to choose those projects fairly soon. So if we can, I'm going to share this over. I made a list of like, I don't know, 10 to 12 potential projects based on things that I had heard from you all were important and that you wanted to, some of them anyway, and then some of them were just sort of my own ideas, but not sure if you had gotten a chance to take a look at this list, and if you had any suggestions.
Melinda, before we do that, can I just quickly ask a question about the Glazier project?
Yeah.
I just want to know, you know, what are we going to do next? I don't want to get behind the 8 ball on this. I think it'd be important to learn more about the town's options and how much they might cost, and so that we can, you know, decide which effort to support. I don't know how we go about doing that, but.
Yeah. Well, that's a good question. And I mean, my understanding, and I think Ken sort of confirmed it, is that this property is worth millions of dollars. Like, you know, I would say starting from about like $4 million and upwards. So I think the money that we have in ERF, which is what, at 300,000 or something like that, would, you know, if the town even attempted to purchase development rights, the ERF would just be a drop in the bucket. So I think you know, they haven't yet submitted an application, and I don't think they will until they start talking to the town more, and gauging interest in, you know, gauging our interest and our ability to contribute towards the conservation of this property. I also think in terms of getting funding, it's sort of, you know, I could be wrong about this, but it's my opinion that this project would not be competitive for grant funding, simply because they are planning to develop a portion of that property. So, I think it would be one thing if they're talking about protecting all of it, then it might be competitive for like a VHCB grant. But even so, we're talking there is a lot of, it's worth a lot of money. And so I think that, I don't know, things to keep in mind. And I think, like I said, it sounds like, they are interested in working with the town. And I think until we better understand what exactly it is they're proposing, it's kind of hard to, respond, I guess.
I guess the one thought I had is, by the time they get to that process of deciding what they want to do, they're going to be spending money. They're going to be hiring a engineer and things like that. And at this point, it sounds like Ken said they were, if the town wanted to buy the piece of land, I mean, it's money. What they want to get from the piece of land is money, whether it's under a conservation or if it's developing. The bottom line is they're looking for, to get back their investment. So if it was the land trust for public land, all those businesses and things, those would be the ones to reach out to, right? Like Catamount, where they reached out to Trust for Public Lands.
Yeah, one thing, Terry, that I have been thinking is that, we have money in the RF, and there are a lot of pieces of property that we're very interested in conserving if they come up. And if the Glazers are very concerned about making sure that the view shed is still there, they understand that housing is needed and it needs to be clustered and low impact. Maybe this isn't the best place to put our funds. That's just something that I've been mulling about.
And then just to use an example, Catamount, the McCulloughs didn't sell all their land. They carved out pieces of land that they kept for themselves. So I don't know how that plays into, comparing. I don't think it's.
Well, Terry, you
Apples
got
to
to
apples.
remember that the Catamount parcel, we ended up getting almost a 400-acre parcel, which is way, way more than what, what's being proposed here is more like 50 acres, 30 to 50 acres. And to the best of my knowledge, the Vermont Land Trust won't even hold a conservation easement over anything less than 100 acres at this point.
Okay,
So.
good to know.
Melinda, procedurally though, to answer the question about what's next, the Planning Commission's support, at least initial interest in a specific plan, is the next required step, it seems, for Ken and the Glazers to go ahead and put together a proposal. Is that?
Yeah, right. That's correct. So procedurally, there's got to be an informational meeting with the Planning Commission. And then if the Planning Commission thinks that there could be a substantial benefit, or a substantial benefit is likely, then they will recommend that they proceed with a specific plan application. And then there's a whole process by which there's going to be more public meetings. There would be a subcommittee set up to develop a specific plan with the applicant, and so on. But I think before, and it sounds like the applicant wants to be pretty sure that, they can work with the town to ensure a substantial public benefit before they even submit anything to the planning commission. So to me, it sounds like they're well aware of the amount of money that gets spent in developing plans, and they're reluctant to even, start down the road of starting to spend a lot of money on these soft costs until they're pretty sure that that there's going to be a viable outcome here.
See, one of the things that strikes me, and maybe I'm a little cynical about this, but it says the whole specific plan concept, to me, it looks like a way to bypass the usual development and growth management rules and procedures that we have for this town. It's a way of speeding it up so that they're not subject to the limitations of growth management.
And yeah, I mean, I wouldn't disagree. Yeah.
Yeah, Carl, I mean, I don't disagree with you, but I also think, and Matt was kind of making this point at the planning commission meeting, that without an alternative method, what you end up with is bad development in other ways. So sometimes you can get something better out of allowing an exception process, basically.
It was also interesting to me that at that planning commission meeting following this project, Chris Snyder was right there behind him with another specific plan concept for developing the Essex Alliance property, where we've seen his huge proposal for developing that.
Mhm.
Any other questions for Melinda? I know this there's a lot of interest around this. I do think that it's in the planning commission's hands at the moment. So
One other, do we, Melinda, this is on our list, isn't it, of one of the top few that we've identified as important, isn't it?
I believe it's on the top 20.
Okay, well,
Town,
I was just going to
townwide.
say that,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So it is we've documented some importance in the past to this, at least. So,
Mhm.
it'd be, at least we should keep in mind that, if there are ways of protecting as much as possible, then we should consider those.
Mhm. And I don't know, the planning commission may ask the Conservation Commission to explore this issue a little bit more. But, I think to answer your question about what next, I think we kind of, I mean, I would advise just kind of waiting for now and just, yeah.
Should you, Melinda, or Laura, perhaps talk with Megan Cope just to share some of the thoughts that the Conservation Commission had about first hearing it? Because I'm sure that they would be interested to know what we think about it, since ERF, use of ERF funds, or other ways of conserving are a key component of what this would entail.
Yeah, that makes sense. And Laura, I'll, if you want to talk to Megan, I can connect the two of you if you don't have her email.
okay, yeah, you could connect us, Melinda. That would be great.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, everybody. I think we should move on and look at the projects that Melinda has suggested for the field naturalists.
Melinda, all of these are just really, really promising things to work on. It was a little bit overwhelming to look at all the different things we could take on.
Yeah.
Because there's so much to do.
And they only have a short amount of time. So I think, you know, a lot of these may be too big and they may just, they may need to be pared down, and maybe the students could, you know, and the students, maybe some of them will have other ideas. But this may be a good starting point and may spark some, you know, something.
Yeah, I agree with you, Melinda. When I read through them and talked to Walter about them, I think they've got to be pared down to a doable thing. And maybe, I don't know if we can help them do that, or what would be kind of the first thing that we need to learn about each one or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah. You know, so number one on the list here, you know, I had heard that Jens Hilke has 100 wildlife cameras that he's hoping to deploy, and he offered to just, you know, let the students borrow them and set them up. So, you know, maybe that could be kind of a cool project, just to choose some, have them choose some areas. I guess I would suggest perhaps road crossings. You know how Jens had identified the road crossings, important wildlife road crossings, and maybe have them monitor through cameras a selection of those, just to sort of do some ground truthing. That could be a good project, and I think that could be one that might be doable over the semester.
Yeah, that looks like a really fun one.
Looks like 1 and 2 are kind of combined. Is
Yeah.
that right? Do I read that right?
Well, they're related for sure. Number 2 is taking existing observation data, not so much getting new observations. Here's Eric. But it would be looking at what we already have via like surveys that have already been conducted, or observations like on iNaturalist. So yeah. And then I'm not really sure about number 3, that we've already done a lot of work on that. So yeah. And then number 4, that's more sort of, it's kind of more esoteric and vague. So I don't really know. I suppose they could interview some farmers and just talk to them about their ideas around protecting open space and kind of what their hopes and aspirations are for their properties. That could be one thing.
Question, Melinda.
Mhm.
Are you thinking you want to provide them with a list and then allow them to pick from it and or add something if there's something they were interested in doing?
I'm thinking that I would provide them with this list, or, you know, whatever list that as it's modified, and then they could pick something. And you're right. And then if they had something else in mind, they could propose something else.
Okay. Yeah. I do think it might be helpful for us to pare the list down just a little bit, because it's just a lot for them to consider.
Yeah.
So perhaps we could identify like the top 6 or the top half or something to help make sure that whatever they do pick is kind of in that most valuable category to us.
So
Yeah,
they
that
would be
makes sense.
picking one and the whole group would be would
No.
be working on that?
No, these are individual projects. So there are going to be 8 projects in total, and each student would take one on.
Right.
Oh.
So if we offered 8, they would each one pick a project.
Yeah, and it might be nice to give them a little bit of choice you know,
Mm.
that's kind of why I came.
I didn't
up with
realize there'd
more.
be 8. Okay,
Yeah.
then maybe the list isn't that long.
I mean,
There's 11.
if you want to try to prioritize, that might be still a good idea, because then, you know, yeah.
I think that probably they, they're good. I was there on Monday and they're a great bunch of kids. And they've got a lot of, excitement around the project. And I'm sure that, given them 11 choices or 12 choices, that'll give them some options, they can pick. I don't know how they would figure out who gets what, but
Yeah,
they each got specific topics that they're working on
right.
for Laura's project. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the other thing I just wanted to mention, especially for you, Reed, is that Walter mentioned that the UVM Spatial Analyst Lab,
I saw it on the list.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so they there's a possibility to have them do some kind of flyover with the drone. And since I had heard before that you kind of wanted to do that for the Allenbrook, that's what I suggested here.
Yeah, I'd always envisioned it as a great project for like a middle schooler or CBU
Yeah.
student, but having it alone, or even just having the drone footage, even if somebody then wanted to do a project to take the footage and make it into something accessible to the public, as opposed to just research material, that would
Right.
could be a follow-up project.
Yeah. So so the thing about all these projects is I spoke with Walter about what the end product would be, what the deliverable would be, and he would like each student to develop a story map summarizing their project. So I think that would be a really great way to
Yeah, that might actually produce something that we could use right away.
yeah, to present it. Yeah.
Linda, is this the same group of students that's going to be doing the project on South Road, looking at agritourism?
Yeah.
So
So this is the graduate students who are working on Laura Handy's farm. Not to be confused with the undergraduates who are working on developing a survey. So we have a lot going on right now.
Yeah, so the graduate students each one of them are going to be working on 2 projects, their own project plus the Laura Handy project. Is that right?
Yes, exactly.
And this is all going to be done in 1 semester?
Yep. Yeah, I know. It seems ambitious.
It does
But-
indeed.
But Walter says they're a top-notch group, so.
Well, I think it also doesn't mean they'll all be completed in 1 semester. I think Walter, it sounds like he's trying to develop a long-term relationship, and therefore, other students next year may learn from this and move forward. I'm not sure though.
Melinda, I know you and I talked briefly about ways to make our public lands more inclusive. Is that something, and just so the group knows, I was walking at Mud Pond and I went off the trail with Alicia Daniel, and we found ourselves in the middle of a black ash swamp, and there were black ash all around us. And so I let Chief Don Stevens know, and he said he'd like to, go back there sometime and look at it. And this is not necessarily for a project, but something that Melinda and I talked about to maybe sometime think more about how to make our lands more accessible and more inclusive. So,
Yeah, and Laura, I think I put that into this number 10, the land stewardship
Okay.
ethic. But maybe, now that you mention it, it might be, if somebody was interested in this whole idea of land stewardship ethic, it might be advisable to maybe pare it down to that one, to just the the question of accessibility and inclusivity. That
mhm.
might be a more easily tackleable a project that could be addressed in a semester and not this whole giant thing. So that's actually, I think I like that idea. Let's see.
Hi, everyone. Morning. Sorry, I'm a little bit late. I'll just throw in that that first bullet you've got highlighted there, equity, inclusivity, access to natural areas. That also is a good opportunity for applications for federal programs. There's a lot of federal funding out there right now that's tied to underserved communities or disadvantaged communities is the word the EPA is using right now for priority communities. So it's just another opportunity that we could create for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And while I've got the floor, if you don't mind scrolling back up to number 5, Melinda. Sorry, I didn't realize that this link you sent us was an editable document, so I started to write some notes in there. Then deleted them once I realized what else I was doing.
No, that's great. That's what I hoped would happen.
Oh, okay. So on the use value appraisal program, I assume that's the current use program, the other name for the unofficial name. Another opportunity here, if a student wanted to pick it up, would be to help. So you got them mapping out parcels that are enrolled in current use, but also perhaps develop an approach or a plan to recruit new landowners into the program.
Is it for the current use program? Is it true that they're working on a part of that program instead of having to have a forestry plan and actually harvest? Is that there's a part that allows landowners not to do anything on their land, to kind of a carbon sequestration portion of it? Is that actually, are they just talking about that, or are they actually trying to implement
That is, I believe that's in the legislature right now. And it's a bill to allow what they call ecological forestry. And Gary, you can probably speak to this better than I can, but yeah, I mean, my understanding it's for carbon sequestration, and it's kind of like more of a hands-off passive management strategy.
Yeah, I think you've got it right. It's
Okay.
Close enough. I think that it's a little controversial because some people feel that we should, still get wood products out of forests so that we, to utilize. And it hasn't, I'm not aware that it's passed yet, but as you said, I think it's in the legislation.
Mm-hmm.
I think that might be part of some reason why folks don't enroll in the program, is because they don't want to have a forestry plan.
Mm. Hmm. You guys have any other questions about this? Or
I
comments?
was just going to suggest if we wanted to try to prioritize it, perhaps each of us could just, at a minimum, say which one our favorite is.
Mhm,
And that would give you an idea of some of the ones that have strong support.
mhm,
I can volunteer to go first.
mhm.
And of course, I'm going to pick the drone idea because I want to get education about Allen Brook
Mhm,
going.
mhm.
And I think it'd be really cool to combine, to bring in another partner through UVM
Mhm.
in terms of the actual equipment.
Mhm.
Yeah, and Ethan, the forester has also a drone. He said we could borrow anytime. So I wonder if
Huh.
that's just something to keep in mind.
Mhm.
Okay, Eric, go next.
Sorry, Zoom, I don't know, burped on me or something and logged me out and then logged me back in. So are we picking our favorite topic? Is that what's going on?
Yes.
Yeah, it just
Favorite topic.
suggested that if we pick each of us says which one we're excited about, that would at least give Melinda some idea of how to prioritize them.
Mhm.
All right. Okay, well then can you go back to me?
Okay.
Thanks.
I can tell you I'm number one. I just love the idea of Jens having all these cameras and being deployed at crossings and seeing what's out there. I just think that's pretty fun. All right, Terry, do you want to go next?
Sure. I mean, I love them all. Yeah, so it's hard to pick one special one, but since I'm in the Adopt a Trail program, I like that one. And plus that is a big part of the Conservation Commission's charge is to take care of the trails. And, I think Ann O'Day or whoever's will be continuing to work in that new position. They have their hands full. So with other things, but that I think would be a big help, get that going.
Mhm. All right. Thank you, Terry. Gary, how about you?
I'm going to support number 6, the explore opportunities for more trail connections in town.
Mhm. I really like that one too. That was my second favorite. Carl, how about you?
Well, I like those trail ones too. So I would say 1, 2, and 6, but I also like 7, Town Meadow.
Mhm.
Project.
That's great.
Laura went ahead and gave her second favorite, and Carl said, "Hold my beer."
All right, Eric, do you have a favorite?
All right. So I guess I see that I heard Melinda say that we have a lot of irons in the fire right now. So if we didn't have a lot of irons in the fire, I would actually vote for number 5, the Vermont Use Value Appraisal Program, because I feel like we haven't done much with that to recognize the lands that are in current use here in town and learn about what the landowners are doing or what their management plans are. So I think that would be really neat. But recognizing that there are a lot of different projects happening, I guess that would be just one more new project that we would be looking at, and certainly keep that one in the back burner for another year. So I guess I would say if we wanted to just continue pushing something forward that we're already working on and strengthening it, I guess I would go with number 6 as well, the explore opportunities for trail connections.
Melinda, this shows me that all of your ideas were great. All of your suggestions.
Okay, I mean, I'm going to take these notes and try to develop a more clear prioritization with them and just send it over to Walt and just say, these were sort of the priority order for the Conservation Commission.
Melinda, can I add something to what you were just saying? I think, you know, I'm not sure that if some of these are too big for one student, we should at least ask Walter, is there a possibility of sharing the duties between a couple students and picking different pieces of these and making them more doable?
Yeah,
Yep.
good idea.
I agree. And I should also add another qualifier to my selection. That is that I did not pick the drone one because I agree with Reed. I think it's a really cool project, but I also think all the students are going to want to do that to be able to fly a drone. So that's why I picked that one, because I think it'll get selected anyway.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, maybe, who knows, like with this group, you know, but.
True.
Mhm. I actually, so just my own viewpoint here. I would be in favor of this, exploring this number 7 a little bit, just because it has a lot of potential, and it might be good to sort of, I don't know, create a more formalized public engagement strategy for that parcel, because it is right here.
I could only vote for one, Melinda.
I know.
Also, I just know that, you know, Chapin has been and still will continue to invest heavily in making those types of things happen. And he has connections with the school, and and he has some skills to help with some of the items, even though I know he would love to work with students or have somebody else take it and run with it. But I just know that it's already being paid attention to. So that's why I chose Allenbrook.
Yeah, that makes sense. Any other thoughts that you guys have?
Melinda, these are great. And I know that you'll take our suggestions and get a good list to Walter.
Okay.
Just for my own frame of reference, on number 11, which is the Burnett parcel?
That is the one that's, it's south of I-89. It's east of Hurricane Lane, and
Is that in where there was the rogue trails being made?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yep.
Right.
Nice.
It's like you could access it from the top of like Nob Hill Road, I think.
Yep.
Yeah. Right. So are you guys ready to move on?
Yep, it looks like we are. Thank you so much.
So I guess I'm gonna leave now. Thank you, everyone. See you next meeting.
Thank you, Gary.
Thanks, Gary.
Okay. So for the board open meeting law training, I trust that you all took a look at these various documents. And I guess we can, hold on a second. The best way to handle this. Do you want to just, do you want me to go through these, or do you want to ask specific questions.
So Melinda, will the town be holding an actual training online?
This is it. So
Oh, okay.
I've shared materials with you, and if you'd like, we can go through them all, or I can just, assuming you've read stuff, I can entertain questions.
Linda, is there anything that you've seen in the past or the present commission members do that you think, oh no? Just examples.
I think, well, the example that I thought of on reading this was sort of my own doing, and that is, wait, it just, oh my gosh, I've lost it. Oh, that's right. A couple of things. So when there's a vote, in order for a motion to carry, there has to be a core, I guess 4 out of the 7 board members need to vote yes. And it doesn't matter if there's only, if there is only currently 6 positions that are filled on the board, the quorum is still 4.
Mhm.
So that, I think I was a little, bit, yeah. Yeah.
So that's new to me. You guys hear me? I'm getting internet unstable. That's actually new to me. My understanding back when I first joined the Conservation Commission was that there actually was not a set number of members, but that was a dozen years ago or something, and I could be completely remembering that wrong.
Yeah, so in the, I believe it's in the town charter, I think it says the Conservation Commission is a 7-member board. And so maybe that, I don't know whether that evolved over time or whether it was at the board's inception that it was 7 members. I'm trying to think where, okay, where it says,
Yeah, I know it says it's the majority.
yeah. So, and here's, okay, so here's something also, at least, all right. No, maybe it wasn't here. That if there isn't a quorum present at a meeting, whether it's electronically or physically present, you shouldn't hold a meeting. And I know that we have held meetings when there wasn't a quorum in the past, but I believe that somewhere in here, I can't remember where, that there has to be a quorum present in order to even hold the meeting. And if there isn't, you shouldn't have a meeting.
Yeah, you can still discuss because you aren't representing a quorum of the board, right? You can still have a conversation. You can't be a meeting. You can't post
Right.
meeting minutes and so on.
And take any actions.
You can't
Right.
take any votes, right? But you could, I mean, we could stay on the line and converse. It's just not a meeting.
Yeah. I guess, it might be worth just sort of briefly going over the volunteer policy. And basically it's, these members, you as members of the Conservation Commission are appointed by the select board, and you are aware of the appointment process. If you wish to resign, you write a letter to the town manager, a resignation letter. And then that position will be advertised and filled and appointed by the select board. You serve in 4-year terms. And I believe about half the commission is, I believe these are staggered 4-year terms. And then as volunteer expectations, you're expected to attend at least 60% of all the meetings. And I know that you all attend, way more than that. And, expected to prepare for the meetings and participate effectively, et cetera. And then importantly, I think there's something. Yeah, so just the conflict of interest, because this can get kind of tricky sometimes, just recognizing that you're a public official and you're representing and working towards the public interest and not towards your own private interests. And if you do have a private interest in a matter that's before the board, needing to identify that private interest and recuse yourself from the discussion and any actions taken or decisions made. So just being able to understand when you have a private interest in something versus when you're acting on behalf of the town is important. And just, maintaining the public trust, preserving and enhancing the public's confidence in their public officials, exercising leadership, demonstrating behavior that reflects the public trust. So that's kind of, that's pretty important. And then there's this whole conflict of interest ordinance that goes along with it. I think I did say, give you a link to it. So I'm not going to go over this. And, now that we are holding meetings virtually, the leave of absence is not really that much of an issue, but members could request a leave of absence for up to 3 months. In the event of personal illness, care for a family member, military deployment, or extended time out of town for work in which participating remotely via technological means is not feasible. But I think now that we are really participating virtually, anyway, it's quite possible to maintain your role on the boards even when you are out of town. So do you all have any questions on just basic volunteer policy or conflict of interest ordinance? Carl?
Could you define private interest?
Well, like say we're reviewing a subdivision site plan and you happen to live, like you're an abutting landowner to the subdivision and you have some personal interests in, whether that subdivision gets approved or not, or how it gets approved, then I would consider that to be a private interest and an instance where you would recuse yourself. And again, that's sort of, you also have to make a judgment about that, but I would say, and I would say that keeping in mind that even if you don't believe that you have a personal interest, it's also the appearance of conflict of interest that is important and maintaining the public trust. So if you're an abutting landowner to a subdivision, I would say that would be a case where you should almost always recuse yourself because of the potential for conflict of interest or the appearance of conflict of interest.
So it's more than just a financial interest. It's sort of a personal interest, and I can see it on the case of an abutting landowner. That makes sense. But supposing a development comes up and you and comes up for discussion, and you just don't like it, and you think maybe there's too much development in that section of town and you're just against it. Is that a private interest that you should recuse yourself for, or can you engage in the discussion and voting about why you don't like it?
Well, I mean, I think that is a good question. And I think that each one of you serving as a board member needs to be really cognizant of what you object to just based on your personal opinion and what you're objecting to based on your role in fulfilling the town's interests as, as a Conservation Commission member. And I think that I think you need to be examining that, and just try to be cognizant of that. Am I against this just because of, my personal views against development, or am I against this because I really think that it's detrimental to the town, as a board member? I think it's detrimental. So
Yeah,
it's
the town plan and the bylaws are the rules, not
Yeah.
it's not opinion.
Right.
It should not be opinion based when we're making decisions. It's based on our interpretation of how a proposed change or action is going to align or not align with the town's goals.
I agree. I don't know if this is captured in the conflict of interest guidelines, but from my perspective, the board members should be able to be objective and fair and unbiased when they're considering applications. And that's not always easy, that's for sure. I'm looking ahead to this Windswept Farm development proposal and across from Adams Market, and thinking, okay, I may have trouble with that one. I haven't looked at it in any kind of detail, but it's going to be hard to be unbiased or and fair on that one for me anyway.
Mhm.
Okay, I understood, and those are all good points, but if one does have a personal opinion that's not necessarily related to the bylaws and rules that we follow, are we free to express that opinion? Maybe recuse from the vote, but free to express that opinion in the public meeting.
Yes. Yeah, I believe so. Right. So you can recuse yourself from taking a vote on something or making a decision, but you can certainly, I think as long as you acknowledge that these are your personal opinions
Mhm.
and, that you're commenting as a member of the public. Yeah.
Okay, that's a good clarification.
Mhm. But yeah, I mean, these can be really kind of tricky things to try and navigate for sure.
And
I
I think that it's important, especially when there's a question that might come up, from on part of any of us, is whether or not we have a conflict of interest. I think it's important to just talk through it with the group too. Okay, here's my concern, here's my potential conflict of interest. What do you all think? Should I recuse myself from this conversation? And we can talk through it that way too.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
Mhm.
I was recently reading information about LLCs and for instance, what you can count as expenses for running your LLC and stuff like that. And there was a really interesting thing it said in there. It just said there was something called the laugh test, which was if you said that something was an expense for your business and you went into court and you would have been laughed at for making that argument, then that's a good sign that you probably shouldn't be trying to claim that as an expense. And I think that sort of common sense, just stepping back and thinking, what's somebody else going to think when they hear me say this? Are they going to say, that's not you being a board member, that's you being a citizen or something? You just have to try to pause and think how other people are going to perceive your comment.
exactly right. That's something that I deal with in my day job a lot as well. Is there's the real conflict of interest, and that which is something that's clearly described in the conflict of interest guidelines. The board member or whoever has a potential personal financial stake in whatever it is. That's a real conflict of interest versus a perceived conflict of interest in which members or people rather outside of that particular group can look in and say, oh, that person is, lives or, may have, they can't provide an unbiased opinion on this matter, whatever it might be. When in fact they actually can, but it looks like for whatever reason, I'm sorry, I'm struggling to provide a good example at the moment, but there's a perceived conflict of interest as well that's can be challenging to navigate. And I don't think we have to worry about it that often on here, but there certainly are times when some of these larger, more controversial projects that we've looked at or maybe looking at that it could be a concern.
Yeah. And then just as far as like the ex parte contact, do folks have any questions about what is an ex parte contact and like how you should conduct yourselves, how to avoid those? And that's just a situation where somebody approaches you and like say there's going to be a site plan review, Conservation Commission is going to be reviewing a site plan, and somebody approaches you in the supermarket, somebody and says, oh, I hear the Conservation Commission is going to be talking about this project, and then you start talking to them about it. That's considered ex parte and something that you should avoid, and instead just say, thanks for your interest. I can't discuss this with you. Feel free to come to the meeting or write a comment letter, so that's kind of the appropriate protocols to use in that situation. And then if it's really unavoidable and you do find yourself having a discussion with that person, to just acknowledge it at the public meeting. Just say, I talked with so-and-so about this at the, when I ran into them last week or whatever. To just, think about just transparency in that we're trying to ensure transparency and avoiding appearance of any conflicts of interest.
So this is a good one, Melinda. And I guess it raises a question for me. So we are an advisory board. The DRB usually, or I guess occasionally the Planning Commission or Select Board will consider the Conservation Commission's recommendation or advice after we have met in a public meeting forum like this. So this ex parte contact makes sense to me through the conclusion of the Conservation Commission meeting. But then is there still a limbo period after that between where the Conservation Commission concludes its conversation and the DRB weighs in on that particular topic? I could go and we finish our conversation today. I could go talk to a friend about whatever the project is now before the DRB weighs in. Is that considered ex parte contact?
That's yeah, I think that probably would be. I mean, it's a good question, but I think it's probably something that just ought to be avoided. Even after the Conservation Commission issues recommendations.
Except for sharing fact of public record. So if something was said, you can say this was the nature of the meeting. This things that are going to appear in the minutes. These were opinions that were shared about it or viewpoints that were shared about it. I mean,
right.
There's nothing keeping us from discussing things that are in public record.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Good point.
Melinda,
and we have to go ahead, Laura.
Laura, you're muted.
Sorry, Reed, go ahead.
No, I just had a follow-on thought, which is that it's important for us to engage with members of the public as well. So
Mhm.
it's a balancing act between helping people understand the trends about activities in the town, help them understand for instance, the development review process and the role of the Conservation Commission and the types of projects that are coming through the pipeline. Those are things that I feel like we should be talking to people about because we want engagement from the public. We want them to, as you mentioned, attend meetings, submit comments, ask questions, visit the planning office. We want all that engagement. What we don't want to do is start talking about our personal opinions about something, especially before it's been discussed by and recommendations and findings have been published, because it can't look like we are being skewed based on conversations with particular members of the public.
Right, and that's a good point. And and it does say in here, cannot discuss a pending application outside of the hearing. So for that reason, maybe discussing it after the fact wouldn't be considered ex parte.
Or for sure
Okay.
after a decision was made. So if we made recommendations or findings and that went to the DRB and the DRB then approved or rejected something, now that
Well, absolutely,
process is
Yeah.
over at that point, you can talk about how it went and what your opinions were about the topic. And because that process is no longer able to be influenced, it's been decided.
Yeah. Mhm.
Sorry,
Well,
Laura.
Oh, no, Reed, that's great. I'm going off on a little bit of a different thread. So my question for Melinda is, I know there's sometimes confusion about not just members of the public, but what can board members do outside of a meeting? For example, one-on-one discussions or wait for the meeting, or I know that discussions among the group are not allowed, but how can you just maybe go over what you may have seen people do that they probably shouldn't in emails?
Sure. So can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay. So this talks about, kind of those things. So, can we ever be in the same room at the same time unless we're in a meeting? You can be in the same room, you can be at social functions, but you should refrain from discussing specific business of the Conservation Commission that you expect to take up at a later time. So you can't have a discussion that's going to be on next month's agenda or something. And let's see. So the following does not constitute a meeting. Any communication, including in person or through email, telephone, teleconferencing, between members of the so you can communicate about scheduling meetings, organizing an agenda, distributing materials. So those sort of logistics can be discussed via email or
Who should be
phone.
invited?
Yeah, right. Yeah. And then let's see, different types of meetings. We don't, I guess
we don't really have alternate
really,
special meetings or anything like that.
Very rarely. And then group emails. Again, you can have group emails to schedule a meeting, create an agenda, distribute materials. Group emails should never be for discussion purposes. So when I, like, for example, if I just, I don't know, let me see, if I distribute an agenda or something, and then one of you has a question about, some sort of content on the agenda item, it's probably best to just reply to me and ask the question rather than hit reply all, because anytime you start having like a group discussion about a specific topic that's going to be discussed, that's where you run into trouble. And I don't think I have seen that very often, but certainly like any discussion about the Glazer property over email is probably, that would be considered, a meeting that's violates open meeting law.
And I don't know if it's official in any way, but the reason that I suggested, Laura, that you speak with Megan is because we should be very careful about conversations about a topic that we're going to provide input on as a board. In my experience, it's been best to have a representative get more information from another decision-making body, or ask Melinda to research something and report back, to avoid the possibility of like an email that has a few members of the commission, of the Conservation Commission, and a few members of the Planning Commission, and then it looks like we're discussing public issues outside of a meeting.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And I can double check with Matt on, whether it would be okay for you to kind of talk with Megan about this. And I'll just double check and let you know.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? And then the only time that the Conservation Commission has gone into executive session, I think it's only happened maybe once during the time that I've been in at the town, and that would be to discuss maybe a potential land acquisition. If you're really kind of getting down to talking about appraisals or just matters that are sort of, should be kept confidential, that you don't really, but it's very limited. It's really only in the case of a potential property acquisition. And I think, negotiating or securing real estate purchase or lease options. And you have to, make a certain statement during a regular meeting saying we're going to go into executive session, and this is why, because we're initiating executive session because we're negotiating or securing a real estate purchase under the authority of VSA 313A2. And then you have to, you go into executive session, and then you come out of it and you say, we're coming out of executive session, and blah, blah, blah.
I have a question about, just for an example, when we had a site visit off of the road off of Butternut Road, up that Shagbark Hickory Road, and we were all met as a group. Was that in place of our regular meeting, or I can't remember, did we use that as a regular meeting time?
I can't remember time-wise. I think it was actually, it may have been in place of a regular meeting. It was also advertised as a public meeting, like it was it was posted on the website and just, said, and occasionally we do site visits, and I always post those as an agenda on the website.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments about open meeting law or volunteer policy?
it looks like we're good. I mean, if anybody has any further questions too, you can always ask Melinda after or at another time if something comes up too.
Mhm.
Thank you, Melinda. We should go on to staff report.
Yeah. So I saw a couple of you at last night's public hearing for the form-based code. The planning commission held a public hearing, the first public hearing for form-based code. And there was a pretty good turnout. I would probably say that 40-ish members of the public showed up virtually, nobody in person. There were some great questions and comments. And the public hearing has been continued to February 15th. So there will be another, the continuation of that public hearing. And then eventually the planning commission will, maybe at the next hearing, maybe there will be, subsequent hearings with the planning commission after that, but eventually they will vote, whether to transmit that proposed bylaw amendments to the select board, and then the select board will initiate public meetings and then public hearing. And so, it's going to be over the next few months that the bylaw amendments will be in public hearings. And, encourage you if you can to attend some of those. But I don't
So-
know. Yeah.
I was just gonna ask, sorry, I didn't connect in. I remember that about 8 o'clock last night that was happening. Other things
Yeah.
got in the way. But what was the general feeling or opinion of the participants towards the plan?
There were, I think, not too many comments from the general public. There were a few there were questions about what the town was doing to encourage affordable housing in Taft Corners. There were questions about, the protection of green space and how the town was going to ensure that there was some green space protected in Taft Corners. There were pretty focused questions from members of the development community, sort of asking how this could play out for them. And let's see, Al Seneca was there, Chris Snyder was there, Jeff Nick was there. Trudell Consulting was there. So there was some interesting discussion about, how they would be affected, and there were some concerns raised. But in general, I felt like it went pretty well. Carl and Terry, I don't know whether you had observations of your own that you want to share. About it.
It was good to have both public and developers there. And it was, I think it was a good idea that the town is going to have a workshop, I guess, with the developers to kind of walk them through, because it is quite a large piece of documentation, to work through. So I think that's going to be helpful, and I'm glad that they are going to have a second meeting, continue the conversation, because I'm sure that, like, people forget that the meeting is happening, and they find out about after the fact, and they still want to have something to say. I was glad that someone from the public did talk about how she doesn't really, she supports the form-based code because she lives in Williston, but she doesn't consider it her community. She only runs into Taft's Corners and gets out as fast as she can. So, it was good, but it was good to hear both sides from the developers as well as how that's going to impact them. So. And then I guess I just have a question, Melinda. The Bur Oak, I just know that came up from one of the developers, the Cottonwood guy.
Yeah.
I thought that was protected in some way. I thought that was why the Pyramid Mall kind of get held off a little bit back in the day in the 70s, but
Mhm.
is that like a really common species?
Well, so it is, it is identified as a unique natural community locally in the town plan and in the town bylaw. And so it does have a certain degree of protection. You know, yeah, I think that it would be difficult for development to encroach on that natural community. And, you know, I know Al Senical mentioned, well, these things are really common all across North America. I think that may be the case, but I think they are a unique community in Vermont, is my understanding. And there is a report that we have that was done by a former field naturalist landscape for the landscape inventory and assessment class. So we have this report on the Burr Oak unique natural community. And, you know, I'm happy to share it around if anybody's interested, but, you know, to me, it seems like there's a very old stand of oaks up in the area that are important from a natural history perspective.
My recollection is that that community for a long, long time has been a town-owned country park. Is that not the case?
No, it's still privately owned, so it's all on Al
Really?
Senical's. Yeah, yeah.
Melinda, I'd be interested in that report if you could send it.
Mhm. Yeah, so one of the things that came up was Senical talked about how identified on the regulating plan, over like about half of this property is identified as green space. So that was kind of a I don't know, a discussion.
And would that, excuse me, would that land be, so what I'm looking for, eligible for like ERF funding to, Matt talked about that the town could buy the land if it came to that,
Right.
to keep it open?
Yeah, I mean, potentially that's one tool that the town could use. There are some regulatory protections, at least just for the delineated natural community area itself, but that's a relatively small area. And the green space that's shown on the regulating plan encompasses a much larger area. But certainly, yeah, at the end of the day, even with these strong tools that we have to protect the green space, at the end of the day, the town would need to decide whether or not they wanted to buy the land and protect it as green space. So anyway, yeah, that's what I have. That's all I had to say about that. And then as far as the NRS 206 spring class, I've got a group of students who I'm working with to develop a survey that's going to explore the idea of expanding allowed uses in the ARZD to encompass things like agritourism related or other uses like camping and, campgrounds and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm going to continue to work with them and hopefully they'll be able to develop some kind of a survey. And that survey, the idea would be it would be distributed, not this semester, but the fall semester. We would engage another group of students to distribute that survey and collect results and summarize results.
Thank you, Melinda. It looks like our meeting we still have a couple minutes left. Does anybody have any further comments about anything we've talked about?
And I see a message in the chat from Eric asking if Reed Willis has any updates from the Winooski Valley Park District. I don't know, Reed, if you've been to a meeting yet, but
We had one meeting in January, and there's not a whole lot to report at the moment.
someone's clock.
Yeah,
Whoops.
Thank you, Reed. All right, well, I will then say that this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody. And enjoy the snow.
Yes. Wellness Day on Friday.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Thanks. Have a good day.
Bye,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, thank you.